Huckberry has also always been a great, almost like agency model for other brands. We started with brands we sell and then brands who overlap with our interests. But now actually tourism boards have reached out to us and are like, can you bring this show to our place? Wow. And then even airlines, Dirt should be on Japan Airlines early next year. We're working with other airline partners as well. There's a lot of interest and it feels really good because for the tourism boards, like we get to go shoot in a new place and they get this really kind of unique content.
Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Kate West, the director and producer of Huckberry Presents. Kate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to dive into the Dirt series that Huckberry has been producing. How long have you guys been producing that show now?
It's been about 3 years exactly.
Okay. So 3 years. I'm assuming you've learned a lot and kind of continuing this theme of conversations we've been having on the show lately, talking about content and media and where it's all going and what's working and what isn't working. So Kate, I think you're one of the best people to talk about episodic content and what that means for brands. Can you share a little bit of background on the show, what it is, and your role as a director and producer on it?
Yeah, so I started at Huckberry 4 years ago, almost exactly, and I came on as head of production. And which was really similar to my role at a big outdoor brand that I'd worked for before Huckberry. And while I was sort of doing these photo shoots for mainly product campaigns, I just realized there was this huge opportunity in storytelling that went beyond just product storytelling at Huckberry. And that foundation had been set way before me. They'd been set by Ben and Mike and people way before that, and Andy and Rich, who kind of built this community as part of the brand. And it was through their emails even in the very beginning. So people came back to Huckberry for curated clothes, but also curated editorial. And so I sort of pitched this idea of doing serialized content based on everything we'd learned, the interests of our customer, things that were sticky to them. And so then I worked with my friend Josh, who's the host of the show, and we came up with this idea, Dirt.
And how many episodes are you into?
We just launched the 11th episode, which is Dirt, Colorado. And then we are about to go shoot episode 12 and 13 in the next month.
And if you had to summarize, I don't know, high level, what has the response been? Has it exceeded expectations? What's the reaction internally?
Yeah. It's been really, really cool because it's a passion project that has taken off organically. So I think I feel so lucky to be working on something I love that's also resonating with people. So it feels like everything I pour into it, I get out of it, which I don't think is necessarily the case with a lot of creative work. But yeah, people seem to love it. And every episode, it kind of reaches new audiences based on where we're going and who we're working with. And so, yeah, I think by all accounts, it's been pretty successful.
So I want to, throughout this episode, I kind of want to pull on a bunch of different threads and try to unravel like what makes this show work and what contributes to the success of it all. But before we go down rabbit holes, if in one word, other than the talent behind the show, behind your creative team, like what makes the show work other than the people and the stories and the locations? Is there some ingredient that maybe isn't as obvious?
One word. I think discovery, you
Okay.
know? I think it's this element of discovery and unlocking new places. That's more than one word. But it's something that's been a part of the Huckberry DNA for a while.
Why that word? Why discovery?
Well, I remember when we started, Andy, who's one of the founders, was like, hey, leave crumbs throughout the show. Like, leave crumbs. And then my editor, co-director, DP, David from Workshirt, also was like, we have to leave education nuggets. Like, people want to learn. Like, it's actually making this show has instilled a lot of faith in humanity for me because people are actually curious about the world and about things that don't feel necessarily mainstream or in vogue right now. whether it's crop rotation or cover crops or seed breeding. All those things are in our last episode, and people, on the YouTube comments would like geek out about it and get excited about it. So I think just like the mind wants to learn, and we always just try to educate people as we go when we build this show.
Fascinating. So yeah, why an episodic show? How did Dirt kind of come to be? Was there like a business challenge or a problem that inspired the show that you guys were trying to solve for? Or kind of talk to me about how this idea came to be.
Well, I feel like no. It was really organic. It was basically we trusted our instincts, and that's everyone from the content team beyond me to Ben and myself. But we just saw that people were coming back to our YouTube channel. More and more people, more and more of our demographic at Huckberry was engaging with YouTube. And we just thought a series was a great top of funnel way to kind of spread awareness about Huckberry. So there wasn't a prompt. It was more like, this feels really, really right in this moment. And Ben agreed, and they gave me a teeny budget for the first episode, and we all killed ourselves. But that when I got that episode back from David, who edits it and shoots it, and it's only 15 minutes, but I was like, oh my God, this thing is gonna work. Like it was like one of the best sort of professional moments in my life. I was like, we did it, and I knew it was gonna resonate with people.
So you mentioned that Huckberry has a long history of producing content, and Ben O'Meara was on the show in episode 72, and he talked about a lot of the content and the foundations of Huckberry and the newsletter and kind of how everything was built to where you are today. When you're thinking about types of content and things to produce, you mentioned you've done a bunch of one-off pieces, and then this idea for serialized episodic content kind of took root. Talk to me about maybe the benefits or the considerations to go with episodic rather than continuing with the one-off direction, and maybe speaking for Huckberry specifically, but then maybe at large for kind of the outdoor industry in general. What are things to consider?
I think episodic works for certain brands, and I think for Huckberry it works really well. Again, going back to that community you mentioned, like people come back to Huckberry, and we wanted to replicate that on YouTube, in media format. So that's why it felt like such an obvious fit for Huckberry. Also, Huckberry really understands the interests of its customers. It is data on what people are reading and how they're responding to different articles. I mean, it's really it's not even formulaic. Like they're just really, really smart and attuned to their customer base, and they really, really care how people interact with their site and their brand. So we knew what people liked, and a lot of people compare Dirt. And I mean, this is like a huge compliment, and I don't even know if you can make this comparison, but to Anthony Bourdain. So we knew our customer resonated with Anthony Bourdain. Every time we did an article on Anthony Bourdain, people loved it. And then I think we just sort of kind of built off that sort of love of food and adventure and sort of did our iteration of it through Dirt.
So you talk about knowing your customer. What do you know about them? What did you know about them before you started the show that led you to believe this would be a success? Like you used the Anthony Bourdain example.
Well, we know the demographics, right? Like a lot of brands. But again, I think like where Huckberry goes deeper is like we know their interests, like as on a human level. We even have a name for our customer. And like we really, really know what, I'm assuming I can say this, what we call him Jack, likes and what he responds to. And so we sort of knew that Jack is curious. They're educated. They love to travel. They love food. They love culture. They love music. So it's a space. It's a really fun, as a creative on the team, it's a fun space to play in because you don't only just need to like work with the top outdoor athletes in the world, but you can speak to authors that you're interested in or artists you love or musicians that you love. And usually that'll spark interest with Jack too.
What So I think what I'm struggling to understand and what I'd love to like dive into and try to piece together is like what's unique about Huckberry and why does YouTube work for Huckberry when YouTube doesn't work for so many other brands? Um, like you guys have figured out something that seems special and seems very unique and on brand for Huckberry, and I don't see a lot of other outdoor brands following necessarily what you're doing. And if we had to try to piece together what that looks like or why that is, what do you think?
I think that's a really good question. I think we're still figuring out why it's working so well, and there's a lot of space for trial and error, which is cool, which has allowed for us to learn a lot about what's working for us and what doesn't work for us. And what doesn't work for us, we're like, meh, maybe not. Um, I think Huckberry, because it has established itself as somebody with a point of view, it's not just a brand, but it has a point of view, right, on travel and home aesthetics and obviously style. So I think that, and it's this whole editorial kind of extension that's been a part of the brand, and that came through. I mean, and we've always had a specific voice, right? That's colloquial and honest and built around discovery and unlocking certain things. So I think people come to us for that point of view, and that extends to YouTube because we give them viewpoints, right? On travel, we have Huckberry Homes, which is on people's homes and spaces. And it works, like it is. And then I also just think that like people who search for our brand is a certain demographic that's a little bit maybe more sophisticated than other YouTube viewers, a little bit older. Long form content seems to really resonate with our audience, which isn't necessarily the case with other brands, I think. And then I think the flywheel is the serialization of everything. So people come back. They want another Dirt episode, so they come back and they want to subscribe. And it's not just a one-off viewer, but they come back and subscribe.
Tell me more about the point of view. Is that something that other brands lack? Would you say that, or is it maybe more nuanced than that?
I think POV and voice can be like very intertwined. I mean, I knew Huckberry way before I started working there, and I loved. It's a trusted voice, right? It's a trusted perspective. So it's like, oh, Huckberry recommends going to this rad restaurant in San Francisco where I used to live. I'm gonna go check it out, And I think it's Huckberry has always done its homework in that way, and put a lot of time and thought into editorial and the written word and curation. And then I think it's just more of a lifestyle brand. I think a lot of outdoor brands are outdoor brands, and this is more of a lifestyle brand, right? It teeters into different spaces that, the big outdoor companies just don't teeter into. And then also there's accessibility, I think, which is really what I love about it. It's human story. So I think that is, at least for a filmmaker, is really fun to tug on. In the world of influencers, you can get to the human story and people appreciate that.
Does the point of view lend itself, I would assume it lends itself to personality. And I think like that's maybe one of the best things that I feel when I experience the Huckberry YouTube experience. It's like there's a personality to it all. And I don't know if I'd go as far to say that when I look at other brands, there isn't a personality, but it's like you guys are putting people front and center. And Josh is the host of Dirt, and he is the person, he is the face that represents the show. And that's a very different take.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think, it's Huckberry's a personal project. Like Rich and Andy, they're still really involved. Andy's a lot of the copy is an iteration of Andy's voice. And Ben O'Mara is like the face of the Gear Lab, and he did the 72-hour show. So I think it's personal, and it's storytelling from humans in the brand. And the creative work is really personal too. A lot of times we're highlighting people internally who live the lifestyle of Huckberry, and that's very important for the brand. But yeah, I think there's a sincerity that comes through with the brand. And I mean, it is really, I can tell you, it is really personal. I pour my heart and soul into Dirt, and so much of the voice is my voice. in addition to Josh's and Workshare too, even though they're freelancers. I mean, they have their point of view comes across, they're the DPs. They set the visual language for the show. So I think that comes off through like very sincere storytelling.
What do you think is, speaking generally for outdoor brands, like what are the necessary components in order to have a successful YouTube channel?
Well, I think it depends. I think you really need to hone in on the interest. I think niche interest. I think personalities are really important. You find those personalities that people resonate with, those authentic personalities. And Huckberry still has a lot of work to do in that department. Um, and I think, I'm trying to think of like it's so funny because like Huckberry is an outdoor brand, but it's also a lifestyle brand. So again, we can play in so many different places and like pull on so many different interests. But I think for outdoor brands in general, I really think people do resonate with sincere and authentic storytelling, and just finding the vehicles for that is great, whether it's the topic or the individual person.
Mm. For the success of Dirt, like how important was the community that was already built amongst the Huckberry brand? Was that
Huge. Yeah, huge. And, Dirt's a Dirt is a substantial part of the growth of the YouTube channel, but like John Desiree and his team have done a great job in terms of just pumping out content that is high quality but easier to do. Like the gear labs are great. People come. This is like another thing I think that I mean, this is so obvious, but a lot of people go to YouTube not to be as like an escape from boredom, but also to learn, right? So I think that is something that Dirt does in an understated way, right? Leaving those crumbs and touching on people's curiosity and education. But like the gear labs, like in a lot of them, people are learning about something, whether it's even what people carry in a backpack when they go into the backcountry or carrying a backpack around New York every day. So I think like there's that component too. I think I actually just lost your question, but
you're good? So this is something that I've thought, and I guess I'm curious to hear your reaction. I guess to kind of reiterate, like I feel like a lot of brands struggle, I guess I'd say, like with YouTube and try to really figure out how to make it work. There are exceptions, and there are people out there who are doing it really well. But I often feel like when it comes to this world of brand storytelling or episodic content or long form content, like there's still a lot of questions about like how does this work? How do we really how do we maximize this? And I often wonder if one of the missing pieces to sometimes this stuff not working is when a brand produces something, they're making the assumption that the audience wants to hear from them and that they have something meaningful to contribute. And it seems like in order to reach that spot where that trust is earned with the audience, like that takes a long time and it takes a lot of investment. And I'm curious if you could speak to that idea, if you agree or disagree.
100%. I think like, and I have grand ambitions for like what I want to create at Huckberry, but like then you realize like maybe Huckberry doesn't need like 6 high quality shows, in addition to Dirt. At the end of the day, we're selling product, and I think you can get, especially the creative team and the brand market team, you can get lost in the thought that like everyone needs this storytelling extension because it is sexy and it is fun. But I don't know if necessarily with YouTube, like if you build it, they will come. Like to your point, it has to be a brand that's established that trust and that community with its customers. So Huckberry's sticky, right? Like people come, they read, they stay on the site. Our email click-through rate is incredibly high, and I think with other brands, they don't have that. And you have to work to build that, to your point, whether that starts on Instagram and then that populates over to YouTube. But yeah, there's a lot of foundational work that needs to be done to get there in an effective way.
So let's say I run a brand and I'm in the process of building trust and building community. What's maybe a sign that I have built enough equity with my customers and my audience to maybe take the plunge and go further and create an episodic show or try to build out the YouTube? Like, is there any way you could quantify?
I think when like people that's a good question, and I don't know if I can answer it, but I think if people come to your brand for a specific point of view, I think you want to build off of that, right? So if they're gearheads, then like build off of that, then create a lot of information and content around gear and informing people about gear. And I think from there it can build on. I also think just this is an tale as old as time, but finding personalities that resonate with your brand and that can be conduits for your brand and that are just great brand fits and look the part and talk the part, and are out there as extensions of your brand.
But it sounds like understanding what your point of view is and why people come to your brand is
Yeah, beyond just product, right? Like, what else do you want to tell people? What else do you stand for, you know? Um, and again, like, dirt is the result of 10 years of foundational editorial work that the brand put in, I just was able to capitalize on it. But there was so much work done in brand building before dirt came along. I think dirt's helped the brand, and hopefully it's been a megaphone for the brand. But, yeah, I think there's so much foundational work that needs to get from point A to point
mm.
Z,
Yeah, maybe to reiterate, that's 10 years of slowly
Yeah.
putting coins in the bank and building that equity. That's
Yeah, I mean, when Huckberry started, I mean, the whole team, I mean, I wasn't there, but I think about this a lot. I mean, the whole team would be working till 12 every night on the copy for the email. That's the founders, that's the merchandiser, that's like the product buyers. Everyone was involved. I mean, it is a real sort of brand that stemmed from like the heart, and I think that and there's been a lot of effort as it's grown, to preserve that voice and POV, so it's a lot of hard work. No good creative comes without hard, hard work, which should be
well, and
remembered.
and to your point, like it's hard work actually producing the creative, but then there's so many other supporting elements that have to be in place in order for the creative to actually work.
That's a really good point too. I mean, Huckberry Dirt I have essentially a freelance team to produce the actual content, but the takedowns and the amplification of it and how it lives on the Huckberry website, that whole ecosystem cross-platform takes an army, So it's like, yeah, I get to do the fun stuff. Well, sometimes it's fun, mostly it's fun. But I think you have to in order to actually get this out in the world and connect it back to your brand, there's a ton of work that needs to be done behind the
So you know
scenes.
that classic meme or that image that pops up on social media? It's like the picture of an iceberg, and then there's like the picture of the result, and then all of the work and all the layers below it. If you had to use that analogy, and if a single dirt episode is the what you see sticking out of the water, how much is below the surface?
Oh my god, you don't wanna know. It, like, doesn't make sense. I mean, from my time, from my pre-production and post-production on this thing, my god, I spend, I mean, insane amount of hours, probably like 500 hours on either side. And then, in terms of just like the social team is involved. I mean, this is how brand marketing's incredible, right? Mike and Olivia at Huckberry, they take what they take it, they connect the dots with product, they connect the dots with like comms, whether that's social, and then the content team, which is a teeny, super teeny team internally. It's like content and growth. They do the cut downs. They make sure the thumbnail image is right and resonates with the audience. So there's so much thought that goes behind this. It's not just like a cool piece of content and we just like drop it on YouTube, There's a ton of work that goes into behind the
So
scenes, yeah. There's a big mass under that
percentage
iceberg.
wise, like how what would you say?
In terms of
Like
what?
what's
Like,
is 5% the actual output of the episode, like the episode itself, and then 95 is everything else? Or
no, I think actually the work to make this thing is insane. It's probably like The work, it's actually probably like the bulk of the work is still done in the creation of the episode, from pre-production to post-production, from composing the music to the animation, all that stuff. But I would say there's like 30% under it, which is the amplification engine.
Hmm. Talk more about the pieces that we don't see, the social cut downs, the amplification. Um, what are you guys finding is working well there? What works? How do you get this stuff out into the world?
I think so. We started doing Dirt Uncuts, which is kind of cool. The first one we did was with Killer Mike because we had this like great interview with Killer Mike, and we're like, when are we ever going to get Killer Mike again? Because relatively, like we don't. I mean, as a brand, we don't actually spend that much on marketing and in influencer marketing at all. I mean, Killer Mike did our interview for free as a favor to the chefs that we are working with. So that's what's cool about Dirt. I mean, like our talent fees, we don't really have a talent budget, but people want their story told. And then the greater community around them wants to tell their story, and they want to tell the story of the place that they live. So that's like a really fun part about Dirt is like when people get it, they'll work for it and they're excited to be a part of it. So going back to sort of like the amplification, so we do obviously email support. So we promote in an email, which is the email is a huge, it's kind of the tail that wags the dog at Huckberry. I mean, at least it was when I started. So um, emails are a great kind of amplification engine. And then there's a series of social cuts leading up to the edit for promotion and then after the edit as well. And then there's a page on our website with all the product that's connected to Dirt. And then we started going back to the Dirt Uncuts, and we started actually taking scenes and making them longer, scenes that we had to cut, and we actually did sort of like the full scene. Or we kind of lean into a character with these Dirt Uncuts. They're sort of like, it's pretty fun. We're trying to figure out what's working and what's not working. But we just did it for Texas. We did a few Dirt Uncuts. We did one with Liz Lambert, who's like a character who's awesome. And we went to a flea market with her, and that didn't make it in the edit. And we were like, how can this not, how can we just this sit on a drive for the rest of its life? So we made that edit. So it's squeezing more content out of Dirt, and then separately amplifying it on the various platforms that Huckberry has. Also, we do editorial pieces. So we do articles connected to each episode. With Ireland, what was really successful was an itinerary. So people would watch the episode and be like, where do I start? How do I have this experience? And then on our journal, we had an itinerary that built out sort of the journey and then some. And I think that's something that we're going to do moving forward, especially when we go international. But yeah, so it's really, again, a total, like there's a huge engine behind me.
Yeah, talk to me more about the so in the description of each YouTube channel, you've got a link and that takes you to a landing page for that particular episode. And as you said, it kind of features all the gear. That's something that I often wonder, or it seems like another challenge that brands have is like, how do we connect the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel? And here you are doing it it's in the first line, or maybe the second line of the description in YouTube. What sort of, if you can, what sort of impact do you see on sales through that link, through the connection of each episode?
I think we've been successful, but I think we want to be more successful, right? So like we definitely meet the brief as a top of funnel content series. So just spreading awareness about Huckberry, right? And then getting people curious about Huckberry. And then again, Huckberry site's sticky. So once you go to huckberry.com, it'll be hard not to spend, 5 to 10 minutes just cruising around because there's so much. It's just an infinite black hole of cool stuff and articles. But so in that, we meet the brief definitely with the top of funnel expression through Dirt. Where we're still trying to figure out is the sell-through of product. And with certain times, sponsors come into these episodes, whether it's like Red Wing Shoes or Gerber or Decked. And then we're more overt about including that into the episode. And we'll give them takedowns that they can promote on their channels. What's interesting is Shopify does allow plugins to YouTube. We haven't experimented with this yet, but I think that's where the show is going, where you can actually, like, if Josh is wearing a certain shirt, you could actually buy it. It would be click through. But we do not have that engine in place now. I think that's something that we're working towards. So that would actually make maybe my life easier, because instead of trying to find creative ways to connect the dots are connected. But I think so we're still figuring it out. I mean, I think one way to do it that could be more overt is, again, these like takedown videos that are specific to the product, that it's like, okay, and they connect it right to dirt.
Mhm. You mentioned sponsors. Talk to me a little bit about how you put these projects together, how they're funded, and I think you've also talked about maybe the possibility of finding partners to help fund these in the future now that there's a following and some hype around these. Can you share a little about kind of the quote unquote more business side of how these are produced?
Yeah, sure. So like this model, in terms of having brands that we sell on our site help fund content, longer form content. You know, my colleague Mike started doing that years ago, and I copied that model for even the pilot episode. I reached out to Bare Bones and I was like, hey, will you give me like $5,000? Or I don't even know what it was. It was like pretty much nothing, end product. And I'll include in this pilot episode. And good for them. They like took the jump and they were like, sure, we like what you're doing. We think this is gonna be awesome. So we'll give you this. And I was like, okay, awesome. And I was sort of like that first one, I was like scrapping it together. And Tin Cup came in as an early sponsor too, even though we don't sell their product. I mean, again, like Huckberry's also always been a great, almost like agency model for other brands. And we capitalize that on Dirt through, we started with brands we sell, and then brands who overlap with our interests, like whiskey, obviously is an obvious one, Tin Cup, and then we just did Stranahan's for Colorado. But now actually tourism boards have reached out to us and are like, can you bring this show to our
Oh, wow.
place? So Ireland was an amazing case study on that. They were a great partner. And I think they're really happy with the result. And then also we're working with Tourism New Zealand. I leave next week. And then even airlines, Japan Airlines, shout out to Rebecca from Japan Airlines, who's like my favorite sponsor partner, one of my favorite. But she's been a great kind of like creative thought partner, and she funded both of the Japan episodes, and we're going to do another one in a month. So there's a lot of interest, and it feels really good because, for the tourism boards, like we get to go shoot in a new place and they get this really kind of unique content expression of their place that will hopefully motivate people to travel there. And then with airlines, one of the cool things is we can also get it can be a distribution partner as well. So we can get in-flight entertainment. So Dirt should be on Japan Airlines early next year. We're working with other airline partners as well to solidify that. So it's really a collaborative partnership, it feels like, with all these sponsors. So it feels pretty good.
I'm just kind of amazed at like how, I don't know what the right word is, like thorough. Just there's so much that's working so well for this show.
Well, and a huge part of the engine and is this guy Jeremy, who's head of our media partnerships, who gets it. He gets it from the sponsor side, and he gets it from the brand side, and he gets it from my creative side. So he's been a huge help in terms of getting more funding for this project. And Huckberry, it's a really smart business. Like, they're not just going to blow a ton of money on media, because media is expensive. Like, it's so expensive, and it's hard to see immediate ROI on it, especially top of funnel content, So this sponsorship funding has helped sort of allow us to have a longer runway for Dirt specifically.
So what I'm hearing is you've got this incredible foundation of a brand that, because of that foundation, gives you this opportunity to produce a totally new type of show to the outdoor lifestyle community. Because that's gained traction and attention. Not only does it meet the brief at its barest minimum, but now you have partners and people seeking the show out to actually fund it to distribute on your own platform. Like, I mean, it seems like you got multiple slam dunks.
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, I'm still pushing a giant rock up a hill.
I
Let's
don't want to
you know,
discredit
like
like the actual work that it takes to
yeah,
produce, but
it's still no, it and, yeah, I mean, but I also think, like, there's something magic about the content. Like, Scott Ballou is somebody who I spoke to when I got the title Huckberry Presents, and, I'm like, "How?" I was, like, overanalyzing all this. I'm like, "How do I make the perfect show for Huckberry?" And he's like, "Trust your instincts." Like, if you create good content, people will watch it. And that is definitely a motto I stand by, and probably more than anything else is what I believe in. It's like find the right team, find the right chemistry on set, take risks from a creative standpoint, trust your instincts more than anything. Like I think first and foremost, I'm a creative, like I'm less shrewd on the business front, but I believe in my, partners, and I believe in Huckberry in that capacity. And then but I think the content is really special that we're creating, and I really believe in that first and foremost.
yeah, tell me more about the idea of quality versus quantity. Maybe what's your personal philosophy, and then how does that extend, or does that extend to the brand?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, if I could make more dirts every year, I would, but I think a few things are holding me back. One is, like, again, like, going back to this internal team that's an engine behind this, like, this is still not, like, it's not a huge priority for the business because we're not generating really any revenue from it, so, we can only allocate so many internal resources, and I need them to push these out, so it would be a bottleneck. And then in terms of, like, the amount of work and time I put into pre-production, there's only so many I can, come up with. So it's like a scalability issue. But, I do think, like, if we had, 8 episodes of Dirt a year, people wouldn't be exhausted by it. I think people would want it, and I think it would actually get more views and lead to more YouTube subscribers. So I think, more is more. But I think something that, Huckberry's learning and trying to figure out is, like, how many shows do we need as a brand? Going back to, like, what do brands really need? You look at other brands who are, like, throwing out new shows and then contracting and, they're, like, coming up with new shows every month, and then they're like, "Oh, actually, no," So I think we've been actually really smart to be like, even though there's a part of me that's like, "I want another show," I wanna capitalize on this and work with other people and, like, this is such an exciting time in my career. Um, I think it's been smart that we've sort of been like, "Let's kind of, like, put this out in the world, see how our audience interacts with it, like, see what's working and what isn't, and then we will build from there."
If you had to give a generalized response to the idea of quality versus quantity when it comes to content in the outdoor, and I say outdoors, I include Huckberry in that, like, as a lifestyle, all the lifestyle
Yeah.
brands out there. Um, I guess your thoughts on that idea from the 30,000-foot level about where the industry is going.
I mean, I think the outdoor industry puts out some of the most incredible content out there. I worked in independent film in New York. All my colleagues were Tisch graduates, and um, that they're beautiful films shot on 16 millimeter that took 5 years to create. But a lot of outdoor content is eye candy, and there's something to it. And there's also incredibly powerful storytelling in the outdoor space. Way beyond what I'm doing. And I mean, they're true heroes. Some of these outdoor athletes are incredible, and they're accomplishing incredible things. I think the only thing that I got after working at a large outdoor brand for 6 years, I just sort of I got really saturated. I felt like I was watching another person climb a mountain over and over, and despite the cool editing and cool music and cool shooting, like it felt, I think you can just get a little bit conditioned to that content. But that being said, whenever I need a new filmer, for whatever it is, even if it's shooting in a city, I'll always start with like the homies in the outdoor industry. Cause if you can shoot on top of a mountain when it's snowing, and lug all your gear up there, or shoot in the ocean, when it's like the swell is insane, you're going to be able to shoot in New York City, and I think there's a resilience to the filmmakers in the outdoor industry, and there's an understanding of beauty that I also understand. And I find inspiration from the outdoors. I live in Wyoming, so I I think it's a great place to start. And like I love that the outdoor industry is pumping out so much content.
I like that word you use, conditioned. Are we just over conditioned and oversaturated with the same type of content? Is that why what Huckberry is doing feels so new and unique, because it's truly fresh?
I mean, I don't wanna talk badly about the outdoor
No,
industry, because it's like they're so people are incredible, shooting these things, and physically, and technically, their skills go way beyond mine. But I think, like, I would just give people liberty to get weird and try new things and tell stories that people aren't telling, and go into places maybe that interest that maybe fall slightly outside of what they think is standard. I think it's cool that it brings, environmental issues first and forefront, when you watch a wonderful outdoor film and you can't help but care about the world. That's so important. But yeah, there's a ton of outdoor content being made, period. And I don't think there's any end in sight. So yeah.
Yeah, where do you feel like the future of brand content is going?
Well, I think more people are gonna look to brand content, to create work because there's money with brands right now, and I think that, you know, um, traditional I guess not traditional because the streaming sites aren't putting up as much money or taking as much risk, um, on young filmmakers, so I think brands are a great way for young filmmakers to get their start. I hope that brand content continues to grow as we've seen it grow, over the last, 5 years or something. It's a really exciting place to play in right now. And it seems like that's where it's going. It really does. And I would really hope that distributors start recognizing, brand content as serious content, not just marketing campaigns, which is like has been a struggle with getting our stuff on other platforms. And maybe it's not Netflix caliber anyway or HBO caliber anyway, but it's hard even to get into a room with someone and then not just look at us as a brand with ad spend, but to take us seriously as creators. And I really, really hope that streamers recognize that. But I think that I mean, the glass half full Kate thinks like this is just the beginning of like rad brand content.
Mm. If you had to make any predictions or about what type of unique types of content we might see in the future, do you have any ideas, or are you holding those close to your chest?
I mean, I know what Huckberry's interested in, but I don't know. Like, I think the world's your oyster. I think you just got to find the right platform, the right personality, the right creative team, and you can tell any story you want. I think people are listening. There are more ways to view content now and for your content to be seen than any time in history. So I think more and more people will capitalize on that. Um, and then the good stuff will float to the top.
People are listening. I like that. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope.
Interesting. That's glass half full, Kate. What about half empty, Kate?
That like the influencer's gonna take over the world and I'm not gonna have any more funding. And there's like a lot of paid social spend out there that is very effective in sell through in ways that dirt isn't. Um, and it's fine. It's fine. It's another way to make a living. But yeah, I hope that like the high quality brand storytelling can exist and there's room for it, even despite that
Hmm.
as well.
What are some, as we slowly wrap up here, what are some questions that you're asking yourself or things that you're watching and trying to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions that you posed, I think there's a lot of unknowns out there. I think um whether, the content creation is going to continue to get less expensive and more democratized, and if that's going to work in my favor or work against me as a creator, um, and as more of a director and producer than an actual like a filmer. Um, whether, whether dirt can continue to sustain an audience, whether other brands will create iterations of dirt that um almost cannibalize it, which isn't a huge concern. Another one is like, we've tried a lot to get dirt into film festivals, and it's been hard again because it's brand content. And we've also had to push it out quickly because we need to just get these out. And we can't really sit on them and wait for film festivals to come back to us. Like whether the film festival world and the screening world is a lifeline for dirt, and brand content in general, because it is super fun, and it's a really different way to get your content out in the world. And it's a really rewarding way to get your content out in the world. I think for Huckberry, like where if we will figure out a way to create more shows that's scalable and make sense for the brand. Yeah, those are some of my questions.
Is there anything, we covered a lot. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to touch on?
No, I don't think so. I don't even know what I just said.
Well, I think this has been I think it's fascinating to kind of hear behind the scenes and understand how this came together. And then to understand kind of all the ways that it's working and how you leverage it and all the ways that you hope to continue to leverage it into the future. Do you have any final thoughts? If you had to summarize our conversation, anything you want to leave the audience with?
Good creative is a product of very, very, very hard work. There's no escaping it. I would say that is first and foremost. And also just like find your people. I think like working with friends, I don't know if like Workshirt and Josh consider me friends, but I consider them friends, and like having vulnerability with your team and honesty just is the best way to make good creative and build on your creative, and evolve your creative. So there's a insane beauty in that, and it makes it fun,
Mm, yeah, amazing.
That's something that I think Huckberry like has figured out from the beginning. A photographer I worked with at Huckberry once said, like, fun is fun, on a shoot. And it's like, if you shoot stuff that's fun, if you guys are having fun, that'll come through in the entertainment. And people want fun, especially right now when the world is like on fire and at war. And I think, good TV is escapism. And I think that is when you're thinking about building a series, like lean in.
That's something I think about. I think about, you hear stories about the Great Depression and you hear about how people, like that's when movies became, there was like a surge in moviegoers because people just wanted to escape, the world that they were living. And I know that's a really kind of pessimistic thing to say about today's world, but I do wonder if that's like a huge opportunity.
It's funny you say that. We say that
Do
all the
you?
time. Like, to go to places and be critical or bring up political issues or but we are like, our job is not to poke holes in this place. Our job is to celebrate the place and make people feel good about the place and like bring light, like we want a show that's really light and fun, and I think you're right on. Like, and I think, certain outdoor brands that are amplifying environmental crises or, they're probably, and it's part of their brand ethos, but it's probably more of a challenge to get as many viewers because, they're bringing to light serious issues where we're really not, hopefully we can lead people to certain issues, but that's not our job. Our job is escape and discovery, and fun is fun.
Yeah. Well, there's a time and place for everything. There's, as Mike Rogie on the podcast said, there's a nutritional diet and there's a media diet, and there's room for everything, and a mix of everything is healthy.
Sure. Yep.
Kate, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat. I wish you the best on your next production, and I'm excited to see what you guys continue to produce.
Thanks so much. This was so fun.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.